All right, we'll get started here. I'd like to call to order the Public Works, Finance, and Safety Committee meeting of Monday, October 19th, 2020. Roll call, please, Kristen.
Albertson? Bueller?
Here.
Hoyer?
Here.
Pauline? Lallam?
Here.
Manti? Manti? I can see Beth.
Here?
Okay, there we go. Redemsky?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Y? Absent. Okay. Oh no, Joster's on. Y? Okay, we'll go.
All right, thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. I have a motion by Vilhauer
Second.
and a second by Hoyer. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and we'll have to do a roll call vote. So, Kristen?
Okay. Is Josh on?
Yes, I was having some technical difficulties. I'm here now.
Okay, so we'll go, Y?
Yes,
Mayor, I was just
Vilhauer?
wondering if it was a majority of members present or a majority of members voted. If Josh wasn't here, then it might have been okay to do a voice vote.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I was just curious. That's why I interrupted, but Josh is here. Sorry.
Okay, everybody's here.
Okay, so we had Y was a yes. Billhauer?
Yes.
Roby?
yes,
Redemsky?
Yes.
Manti?
Yes.
Lallam? Okay, Pauline?
Yes.
Hoyer?
Yes.
And Bueller?
I,
Albertson?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is public input, and this is the time for anyone that would like to speak to have their time. If you are online and you'd like to speak, just unmute yourself and say request permission to speak. I don't see or hear anyone, so we'll move on to approval of the agenda. The regular agenda, I need a motion. Motion by Holene,
Second.
a second by Rademski. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please.
Y?
I,
Okay, Billhauer?
Aye.
Roby?
I,
Redemsky?
Aye.
Manti?
Aye.
Lallam?
I,
Pauline?
Aye.
Hoyer?
Aye.
Bueller?
I,
Albertson? Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item 6 is the regular agenda, and A is approval of construction change order number 1, final, with Deutsch Excavating, Inc. for the Eastwoods Drainway project number 1523 for an increase of $13,911.30, bringing the total contract cost to $88,900.25.
So moved.
I have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Holene, and I will ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer Heath Von Eye, to explain this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is closing out a contract that we had entered into earlier this late summer with Deutsch Excavating in relation to the regrading of the drainage channel up there in the East Woods subdivision area off of Cherry Drive. As the council recalls, we've had several discussions on this topic and put together some plans and design to help alleviate some of the concerns from neighboring residents in this area. I've shared my screen with teams here that I'll pull up a picture of the complete project. I apologize, I don't have a before picture. But if you could envision these cattails that exist here in the bottom right of this picture that continued a little bit more to the left of this channel in the original alignment and on down and around the corner. through this tract of city land that was purchased years ago for drainage conveyance purposes. This particular stretch right in front of us here in this picture had been attempted to be excavated out some time back, and it kind of ended up creating a little bit of a trough effect. Now, one thing we've discussed at length since starting the design of this project and implementing a plan to try to get this to grade a little bit better than what it was. I wanted to be fully transparent with council and with the homeowners along here that, it is very likely we're gonna see some continuing standing water conditions in here. Now, this finished product does give us a good positive grade from this culvert. Right behind us in this picture is Cherry Drive, where it curves and goes from east to west and curves southward. But a lot of water from the Prairie View subdivision comes out of this culvert here, or this storm sewer pipe, and flows westerly and then southerly through here. We've gotten rid of that trough effect, but this grade is so flat through here, as you can see in this picture. It is likely we're gonna still see some standing water in some seasons and some certain times of year more than others. There may be times of year where this does dry up completely, and others, depending on the amount of contribution from storm events, from groundwater conditions in the neighborhoods, pumping sump water and things of that nature. But the project at hand, we were able to accomplish our goal of creating a uniformly graded channel and realigning it out further north here. This alignment's a little further to the right than what it used to be by probably, I think, maybe 40 feet. So we were able to push it a little bit further north and out away from the back lots of these residents. And this is the finished product. Now, the change order before the council tonight, there was some overruns on the contract. The Assistant City Engineer, Justin Peterson, is online with us, and I'll hand it over to him briefly just to touch on the two main components of that change order and what ran over there for cost. Justin, if you're online.
All right, thank you, Heath. There were two primary overruns. The first one was there's a group of 6 or 7 trees, kind of right around the bend. You wouldn't be able to see them from this picture, but there's a handful of trees over there that need to be removed as we graded the channel around that bend. And then to get a nice, there's some additional material that was removed as well, and to get a nice grade, so that matches really well with the adjacent property owners. We ended up having some additional area that was disturbed, and that was the additional seating number. And so those are the two primary overruns.
And then the last thing I'll note, Mayor, if I could, is that, again, the original contract price was just under $75,000. This change order, that's just short of 14 grand, brings the total up to just under 89,000. The overall budget that we had in place for this project was right at $100,000.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Councilman Albertson?
This is for Heath. I just always have a question when these overrides come in like this, or, change orders, that we've beaten somebody out of a job because they bid the job, and then all of a sudden now we've come in with, on a relatively small project like this, $74,000 job, and now all of a sudden it's 88, but did somebody bid 85 with these changes in it, or are these strictly our changes that, you know what I'm saying, that we have so many change orders every time we have meetings. I mean, we have one tonight, which is, of course, going to go the other way, but I always wonder that if we're beating somebody out of a chance to get a job because the job comes in at 74, but really it's an $88,000 job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would you just comment on that for me, please?
Absolutely, Councilman Albertson. That's a great point and a great concern to have, and it is something that I can assure you that staff does all we can to try to help prevent change orders on a project. This one in particular, when it comes to earthwork and grading, you know, the engineer's estimate of quantities when they put the design together for something like this, I don't want to discredit that at all, but it's an engineer sitting in an office designing things on CAD and looking at paperwork and survey data, and using our best field knowledge that we have to put an estimated number together. So on an item like grading, it can be difficult to get that exact to a T as far as the estimate goes. And so, which is exactly what we experienced out here in the field once the contractor started grading down the alignment that we wanted, and realized, you know, there was room for improvement in the project, some value-added engineering, if you will, so that things tie in a little bit better to the back lots, like Justin described. Not necessarily an oversight on the engineering side, but just something that wasn't quantified as exactly as it ended up, to the quantity that it ended up needing to be in the field to put the project together, right? You know, you'll see here in the next meeting or two, we'll have some change orders on some asphalt overruns. And that's one where asphalt's another material-based quantity that you can estimate it, but to get the contractor put down the exact amount you're estimating is oftentimes difficult. It's something we've been targeting and trying to do all the more in the field this year, and we've got a couple projects where we came in right on because we were on the contractor the whole time, taking weight tickets, knowing what kind of asphalt was coming, measuring the spread of the asphalt as they placed it. But we weren't able to do that on all projects, and so there are some projects where we did run over. But we do, to the point of your concern, we are doing exactly what you're describing and trying to prevent these from happening from a staffing level. And then as far as a bid concern, this one in particular wouldn't have that concern because of the way that the bids came in. And Justin, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't believe this would have changed the results of any bid with this change order. Is that true, Justin?
In this particular project, there was only one bid, so no, it wouldn't have affected.
That's what I recall, and I don't use that as an excuse to say we don't need to worry about it. I just wanted you to know that in this particular case, it would not have shifted the bid to the next low bidder. That's never a blanket excuse to use in a situation like this, but no, it's a great point, a great concern to have, and something that we definitely are aware of and try to stay focused on during the construction as well.
All right, thank you. Any other? Councilman Hoyer?
Heath, not to put you on it again, I'm just curious if there's ever a practice in engineering, and of course not an engineer, but of going back just through the year and kind of seeing what the average is for how much we miss it by, and then just seeing if maybe there's like, take what we come up with and add 10 grand to it and we might be a little closer, because it always feels like, and maybe we just notice the ones that we have to go up on and we don't notice the ones we get the kickback on. But just, it's almost easier to be like, oh, by the way, we had a bunch of extra funds left over from this, then we need $20,000 to fix this.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a practice or not of averaging what we're off, but.
It definitely is when it comes to putting together plans and specs for the next project. When we're creating an engineer's estimate in-house or even through our consultants, we're using averages of costs. And when it comes to quantities, you know, that of course is a project-specific item. But you're right, if you have a mill and overlay project and you're consistently running 10% over, it makes sense to build that into the next year's project so you have that contingency in there. This is something Justin and I have been in conversation on, something we started last year with some of our projects, in making sure that we're not going into our estimates with our pencils so sharp that we're not giving ourselves that cushion, that breathing room that we need to have with the budget numbers that we have to work with. And something we're going to take a little bit further into next year's projects that I've been talking with Justin on is including not a formal contingency like some communities will do, but some communities will put a 10% contingency in their bids, and it's just there on hold to spend if needed, and it's part of the project budget. Not saying we couldn't do that here, but, you know, those are other ideas that Justin and I are kicking around to make sure that we're getting these projects in within budget. I will say it's not inevitable, but it's very likely you will have change orders on most projects just because you're balancing out those final quantities. And when you're dealing with materials on a large scope, there's going to be a little bit of a correction to make at the end of the project. But obviously, the most you can keep those in check, the better off we are when we've got budget constraints to work within, so.
Sure. It seems like we hit it with asphalt and just mainly materials like that more often than not. But again, just curious if we see a trend and then try to cushion for it or not. But thank you. That was a good answer for it.
Other questions or comments? Councilman Villar?
Heath or Justin, I've got a couple of questions on this project. Okay, you admitted there's probably, could still be some standing water in there depending upon weather conditions, et cetera. How will we know that this is working? I mean, if we get a 1.5, 2-inch rain this fall or next spring, I mean, how will we know that we're accomplishing what we set out to do?
Well, I think that proof is in the pudding with the grading that we see on site now today. This grade is a true grade line from A to B, if you will, that's a one continuous grade. We didn't have that before. It varied throughout that alignment where it would dip lower and then the elevation would increase. And of course, that causes ponding and blockage of water. But to your point, you know, during a storm event, what that positive grade should do is allow that to flow through a little better than what it was and prevent some of that,
Sure.
that trough or ponding effect that was
Okay.
there.
Then another question is, I drove through there this weekend. I noticed there's a fair amount of dirt piled up in the development immediately to the north and east of that. Do we have any concerns if we get a 3-4 inch rain that some of that dirt or a lot of that dirt could potentially wash into this and undo what we've done?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a real concern. And I'm not familiar without looking, doing some research on that, but that's something we can follow up on too on staff, making sure that whatever the situation is, that they've got the proper
Okay,
soil erosion control measures in place.
okay.
I would like to add this neighborhood has very high groundwater. Almost everybody pumps groundwater to the surface 24/7. Many of them year-round, so they're getting variances and pumping to the sanitary sewer. So this will likely always be wet and never dry out. And there will be cattails, it'll be mushy, but hopefully we've narrowed down the locations of where the water is. And it's, you know, if it were very steep, it might travel quickly, but this isn't. It's pretty flat, so it's going to be mushy, hard to mow, and that's not going to be an indication of failure. That's just how it's going to be, mostly because people are pumping groundwater to the surface all the time, so it never can dry out. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. Oh, do you have a comment, Councilman Helene?
Just a comment before the vote. I wanted to verify what my brain was thinking ahead of time. According to a quick look, it is a majority of members present and voting. So you could do a voice vote if you wanted to. Just a straight up aye or no. You don't have to do a
10,
roll
though.
call.
We have,
Well, I didn't, was Adam here?
yeah, he
Okay.
is.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if Adam was there.
He was there, he's just slow to press
Okay.
unmute. Yeah, he's flashing. He's ready to vote.
thought he was gone, because he didn't.
No, my computer glitched.
Yeah, okay, we're all 10 here, but thanks, Reed. I don't like doing those roll call votes every time either. But we have to, that's how it is, so. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please.
Why?
I'm ready this time. Yes.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Helene,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Albertson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item B is approval of construction change order number 1, final, with Dunick, Inc. for the 2020 Parks and Recreation Improvements, Mount Hope Cemetery, Project 2018, for a decrease of $9,055.03, bringing the total contract price to $46,616.97.
So moved.
I have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Vilhauer, and I'll ask the Public Works Director Heath to tell us about this one, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First, I'll start out by acknowledging this is a project that we assist the Park and Rec Department on. This is the facility, the Mount Hope Cemetery facility, and its improvements are under the domain of TK over there at the Park and Recs Department. And of course, we help them out with the engineering projects such as this. And so he may want to chime in on this discussion as well. But what we're bringing forth is a change order for a reduction in the overall contract for some work that we did on the roadways, the internal street network, if you will, for the cemetery. And this came in a little bit under the contract amount, which in effect ended up bringing the total contract under and within the original budget amount. Original budget amount was $50,000. The original bid contract was $55,672. With this decrease, change order of a little over $9,000, that brings the total contract price to a little over $46,000. And I will defer to either Justin or TK if there's any specifics on this reduction, and otherwise help answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Did TK or Heath or Justin have anything to add?
I don't, Mayor, other than a big thanks to the engineering department for assisting, so nothing to add.
Okay, thanks. All right, council, any questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
I'm a little bit confused. What was done out there, or when was it done? TK or Justin? Reason I asked
This
the-
is an ongoing plan we have. We got a 5-year plan to continually redo separate roadways out there. This is phase 2 of our 5-year plan. And this year's scope, and Justin can jump in, he was the project manager, but we basically did from the front gate to the south along that main roadway. Last year, we did a little more internal work. So we identify each season what's in need, and we stretch what basically 50,000 will accomplish within the pricing that Heath and his staff get. So
this.
that's kind of where we're at, but
Okay,
go ahead.
so this amount was strictly for what was done this summer, because you're right, it was a stretch of what, a quarter mile or so out there to the going to the south? So this was
Correct.
strictly just for that?
Yes, and Justin, you're on, you're a little more detailed on it if you want to jump in for that question.
It just struck me as an awful lot for a relatively short segment of asphalt out there. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Right, and I know maybe Heath wants to jump in too. The bids, came in close to budget, but the quantity pricing was a little heavier this year on asphalt. So we
Sure.
did not get as much lineal feet done as we did the prior year. And that was based on quantity pricing. So yeah, it was not near the scope of work we accomplished in prior years.
Okay. And then also, I know it's an ongoing project out there, but just the observation, driving through there, as you take the road as the road branches to the forks to the left around the shop and office out there, that stretch right in there is breaking up pretty bad. So I guess hopefully that would be a high on the list of the next stretch that's done out there.
Yeah, and I know Marcy and I discussed too, the very entrance in that road you speak of is definitely going to be coming up.
Okay.
And, we do have 50,000 continuing for fiscal year 2021, but it may come to a fact that we're not keeping up at that 50. And in future years may need to expand that dollar amount to truly get caught up. So, but you're right, that stretch is definitely on the radar for the next section.
Okay, thanks, TK.
You bet.
And I could comment too, Councilman Vilhauer, to your concern on the economy of scale here as far as the quantity of work that we're getting done. That's something too we'll probably touch on briefly here later on in the meeting with the long-range CIP discussion that Kristen will be presenting when we talk about the 212 fund and the street improvements and how our dollars simply just aren't going as far as they used to, even in the recent past. That is a conversation we've been having with some of our contractors, and one in particular that this change order relates with is the work that Dunnock's done with us here. And we spoke with them about that and looking at the unit price we're paying for hot mix asphalt material in comparison to other communities in the region, and expressed, our concerns for that and looking at it on a comparative basis. A lot of it for them, is business driven, and when we don't produce the number of tonnage in a season that some of their other regional communities might, it inherently drives our price up a little bit higher than what they can offer in their parent location over in Minnesota, for example, or than what competitors south of us can offer for their communities. So I think it's a little bit, it's obviously market driven, and it's some of that supply and demand coming into play where we're doing what we can with conversations with contractors and trying to make them aware of the sensitivities we're having with it, because it does it does tie our hands as far as the work we can get done, and we're trying to make that go all the further every year. So,
All right, any other questions? I'll look for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please.
Bly,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Mancy,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Albertson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item C is presentation, review, and public input on proposed capital improvement plan. Proposed capital improvement plan book available for review at the Finance Office in City Hall. And I know Kristen's looking for a motion of approval.
So moved.
Motion by Albertson.
Second.
And a second by Hoyer. And I will just hand it over to Kristen to make the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Before the council is a long-term capital plan. This will be for 2022 through 2026. I'm just gonna, instead of going through each department, the council and the public has had an opportunity to see the plan. So if there's specific questions that I don't touch on necessarily, council feel free to bring them up, but otherwise I'm just gonna roll through some of the bigger items. Stop me, ask questions, we can always go back. The biggest things that I want to start with pointing out is on page 3. The number to look at is at the very bottom. So the total spending for the next 5 years in our capital, that's between equipment and capital improvements, is the $65 million. This is a kind of a nice chart because what it does is it shows where we're spending our money, whether that's general government, public safety, public works, culture and rec, and then conservation and development. So this is kind of a nice table to look at. On the next page, page 4, I want to point out that what we did is we actually pulled out some of the bigger items so that the council has an opportunity to see what some of the bigger ticket items are. And those will come up later in the discussion. On page 5, that table at the very top shows where we're going to be getting our revenue, whether that's from the general fund, capital improvement, park and rec, or any of the enterprise funds, as well as grant funding that potentially is going to offset the cost of the projects.
Hang on
But
a
I
sec,
think what I'll-
Kristen.
Kristen, this is Glenn. I got a question for you on that page. Looking at the timing of when some of those expenditures are going to come in, we aren't going to have the dollars to pay for those projects immediately. Is it inevitable that we are going to be looking at having to do some kind of bonding at some sort, whether it's a GO bond or a sales tax revenue bond? I mean, just to get that thought out there in the public's eye that the timing does not lend itself for immediate payment on all these projects.
Yeah, as we get into, I was gonna just jump into that. As we get into some of these bigger items, I've actually added in a little bit, instead of just identifying it as a capital improvement fund, I've actually identified issuance of debt. So yes, there is a number of projects that as we go through the plan, I will point out that they will need to have debt discussed and potential bonding to cover the cost.
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
Yep. So if we do go to the next page, page 7, the very first one that we're going to talk about is the City Hall. This one's been in the plan for quite a while. And as Glenn just stated, this would be one of those that if it does come to fruition, we would need to issue debt. We would not have this cash available to construct a new administrative building. So this sits in the plan as is. We'll keep, there's no change. The other thing that I will point out before I keep going, at the very bottom of each one of the pages, if there are changes from the previous year, it will let you know whether that is that a price went up or it got moved from one year to the next year. So if there isn't any changes, like this one didn't change, it just moved forward as it should in the plan, it'll state that at the bottom of each page. So if there's no questions on that, the next one we'll go to is, I'll actually skip a couple pages and I'll actually go to page 10. This is the fire department. Another big item that potentially if we do, at the very bottom, there's the East Fire Station. This one too has moved forward from previous years. It has increased a little bit in the cost just because we know that the cost of construction has went up. This would be another one that if we wanted to do it, the bonding would probably be necessary to complete this project. The one thing that the council needs to be very aware of, and I believe Don and Doug are both on, and they may want to touch base on this. The side that we always think about when we look at these long-term capital plan, especially when it comes to a new facility, you know, it's different when it's a remodel or you're not really adding. But the East Fire Station would have a requirement to add additional staff to it. So not only would it be an operational piece for your basic building, utilities, insurance, stuff like that, there's also a staffing need for this. I don't know if the council has any questions for them or if they wanted to jump in on this.
I'd be happy to give you a quick overview of what we're looking at and stuff briefly. And then if there's any questions off that, and Don can chime in if I've forgotten anything. So looking at 2023 for Station 3, which would have a presence on the east side of the town, somewhere over along over in the middle part of town there would work well. You know, that's what we're looking at. We had to raise the price of that station up because just as Kristen mentioned, costs are going up. We did look into some substations built around the area. There's one being built this year in Sioux Falls, and that had a construction cost of pretty close to $3 million. So that's what we're looking at. Square footage wise would be 8,000 to 10,000 square feet. We haven't got a complete design or nothing right now, and actually we don't have land technically set aside for building and things like that. We do have one spot that we're looking at, but still looking at that parts of it. We've also looked into what it would look like for O&M cost for the building. We believe with the building maintenance, utilities, and things like that for the operational cost part of it would probably run somewhere around that 75 to 100,000 a year with utilities and things of that nature. And then staffing, we are looking at 2 different options on this. Obviously, EMS is very much needed somewhere near that year of 2023. Right now, as we've demonstrated in the past, a lot of our response times from Station 1, which are currently coming from out in by the interstate, is somewhere around that 8 to 13 minutes for fire and EMS. If we had gotten a station over there on that side, it would knock that down to about 3 to 5 minutes. So very much needed for response times as we are moving forward. Call volumes going up. EMS, obviously, as most you know, is our most need. That's where calls are going up more dramatically than fire. So one option we would have on this building is build a fire station, just like you would if it was a fully fledged fire station. But then just start it out somewhere after it's built. One option would be just have an EMS operating out of there 24/7, but just would have an ambulance with staffing. And we believe that at this point, it's an estimated that it would take us about 4 staff to run a 2-man 24-hour shift crew over there. So using the numbers of roughly about 75,000 staff with benefits and things like that, just as a rough figure, that would put us in at with operating costs somewhere around that 375 to 400,000 for EMS only. And then if we ended up going for a fire EMS station, it would cost us about 7 staff is what we're estimating. And that would run in with operating costs around $600,000 to $625,000 annually. So that's kind of where we're sitting for an overview of what we believe we need, rough estimates. And, we are willing to really research this hard and stuff. We've done a lot of work on this, and that's a ballpark what it's going to cost us. So any questions from that?
Thanks, Doug. Don't see any questions. Okay, carry on, Christine.
No questions?
Don't see any.
Okay, I will keep going then. The next one we're gonna do is page 12. Here's where we're at, the street department. The street department facility is set for 2022. This one is at a budget of just a little, about $4.5 million. I do know that Heath and Rob would both like to speak on this. This one is a project that kind of keeps going a little bit up and down in the need. I think we won't really know until we know what land and what the facility looks like. But otherwise, this would be another one of those projects where if we do it, we will have to plan on issuing debt bonding essentially to complete the project. I don't know if Heath or Rob want to speak on this a little bit.
Certainly,
Heath.
if I may, Mayor. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, so the $4.5 million that we've roughly got earmarked for this is something Rob and I looked at late last fall, towards the end of 2019. And he had shared with me where some of these numbers had come from. And the one thing that I noted, and we put some additional numbers together on, is with the land and the building square footage and the salt sand storage and a fueling island and a scale and the fencing and everything needed to put a full comprehensive facility all together, this number does creep up closer to $6 million. And the square footage of the building alone at some average construction costs that we've been seeing on a comparative facilities, City of Brookings, for example, built a new street facility here not too many years ago. Clear Lake, the county shop there is fairly new. So we have some construction estimates from some similar facilities. And looking at the square footage that we were needing to meet our needs in Watertown for Rob's storage and operations of equipment and machinery and staff, the building itself is looking like it could run around that $4.5 million, which wouldn't include any land, any streets or road access to be built out through that land if we're buying barren land that's unimproved. And then all the other aforementioned items that I mentioned as well. So long story short, this number is looking closer to be a realistic number of closer to about $6 million. And I did also want to note that due to necessity and being the sharing team member that Rob is, we did take, this was earmarked for 2021, and of course had to take that cash on hand to distribute towards our airport terminal funding needs in order to get the airport terminal complete and use our, and I don't know if that was a straight transfer. Chris can speak more intelligently than I can to that, but I do know that Rob has had this programmed in the long-range CIP for 4 years, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but was targeted to go next year in 21, and of course we put that off now because of the obvious need and that we're in complete agreement with, it had to be done to take this money that we had on hand and put it towards that airport terminal. So, Rob, if you want to speak briefly on just, the need at the street facility, kind of like Doug did on the fire department.
Thanks, Heath. Yeah, actually, we started this back in the 2015 budget for the long-range plan. I just wanted to throw a few facts out there. We currently our facilities on 5 acres right now, and 3.8 acres are in the floodplain, and 1.4 of those acres are in the floodway. So our current value, at least 2016 value of our street facility, was around $5.5 million, or I'm sorry, 550,000 is what it was valued at. Let's see. Right now we have, as far as storage space, we can keep materials on site. We have about 1/4 of an acre that we can keep materials on site here. It's mostly chip seal, as you can see when you drive by. We're estimating we really need between 10 and 15 acres for a facility. 2 of our buildings were built in 1956. 2 were built in the late 90s, and I don't know when the other 2 were built in the 70s or 80s. We have 3 heated buildings. 2 of them are uninsulated that are heated, so they're not very efficient, but totaling 12,900 square feet for those 3 buildings, which we do have office space in those. 3 cold storage buildings equal 12,500 square feet, and 6,300 square feet of that holds salt and sand mix. And then we do use the old stone hangar out the airport. Todd lets us use that to store in the off season. We keep equipment out there. But Sue and I put together some numbers today, and Tracy helped us with it too. But we figure we have 71 pieces of equipment that sit out here in the summer outside of our shop space because we don't have enough room. And that's values at around $1.6 million worth of equipment. And in the winter, we have 39 pieces sitting out, and that value is about $600,000 worth of equipment. So I just want to put a few facts out there about what we have for an existing facility and what we're up against. I don't think a lot of people know those facts. So that's all I have for this, Heath. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. The 2 things I'll emphasize there is that I think that the street facility is lacking in most right now, and I think Rob would agree on, is 1, the sheer area that we have, the site that we have is very limiting in area to store materials and use appropriately stage things a way that Rob would like to. And then 2, the value of the equipment that we have that sits outside through the summer and winter months. When they go out for snow removal in the winter months and it's 20 below and the guys are having to come in an hour earlier than they otherwise would have just to simply warm machinery up that's sitting outside plugged in. Granted, it's plugged in, they got block heaters on them, but it's still not the same effect as putting that machinery inside like a lot of the communities our size are able to do to get the snow removal efforts rolling in those winter months. So, in looking ahead, I think that those would be the 2 big needs Rob's looking at meeting: material storage and then appropriate facilities for the equipment to house our equipment in. And we'll be glad to stay tuned with Kristen and the council as we make further decisions on any bonding or anything like that. I know that Rob and I are waiting in the wings to look at exploring land options and things like that as soon as we can and as soon as the council gives us the green light for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Rob. Kristen, you want to keep going?
Okay, so we will continue on to page 17. This is the golf course department. This is one change that kind of, the reason I'm pointing it out is it's kind of came up here in the last little bit. I know it's been discussed, it's never really been placed anywhere. So I probably have Terry speak a little bit more to it, but it is the clubhouse replacement was added, and that's added into 2024 for a little over $1.2 million. So if Terry, if you want to speak a little bit to how that came forward and what all that is going to consist of.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. As the council probably aware, Kristen alluded to is the fact that this has been a top conversation for years. I'm going to say, looking back in files 10 to 15 years ago, we had plans and drawings and hopes and dreams on the clubhouse replacement. So when I met with Kristen, we had the conversation of, we've never really placed it in the long term. So looking through, talking with the board, the golf committee, and things are a little odd placed in previous long-term plans. So what we broke it down is if you can see on the sheet, there would be a design in 2022 that really give us, how much space do we have? What's our need? What would it look like? What size of building, the roadway that goes between the cart sheds and the clubhouse now. We would assume that roadway currently, I'll call it South Lake Drive, which actually loops behind and in front of the cart sheds, would probably be a replacement. To get a new clubhouse would probably take that whole campus area. So you'll see in 23, 150,000 for that road closure. And then in 24, the 1.25 million for a new clubhouse. And we don't know, honestly, what that looks like at this point. That would be part of the 2022 50,000 remodel plan. And this is ongoing. We are seeing the clubhouse currently, I won't call it complete disrepair, but we are seeing the electrical, plumbing, HVAC, the roofing. It's definitely showing its age. And on top of that, it's really square footage for the amount of patrons, members, daily green players we have. It's just really undersized for a 27-hole course. So utilization is a big factor of me pursuing to increase the square footage and look at replacing that. So I'll open that up to questions, whether it's finance through Kristen or overall questions.
All right. Councilman Lallam.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have any way to raise funds for that? I mean, the street department, obviously, that is something that takes care of the entire community, and I would say that there's going to be certain members of the public that are going to say, well, the golf course only really helps the people that are members and or golf there, which I don't know what that population is, but is there any way to fundraise for any of that, or are we looking at bonding that as well? Just kind of a couple general questions.
We do have a little bit of a better opportunity than, say, a street building, because we are fund based. We do charge fees. We've got the sponsorship aspect we could look at, Adam.
Okay.
We don't know where that would go. I would reach out for consultants to tell me those answers, but we do have potential. What that amount is, I couldn't tell you, but sponsorships, naming rights, different things like that. We're in a better position than, say, Heath and Rob are in kind of a different, a different type of facility, definitely. And I'll look at it back to, no different than softball fields, ice arenas, things like that. Everything we do is a specific group. So that's always a tough argument, but if we're going to provide that product, there are certain things that we got to look forward and move on to still have the quality that we do. So, but yes, ultimately, I don't know what those dollars are, Councilman, but there is potential for us, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Helene?
TK, if you were
Yes.
closing that section of road, South Lake Drive, between where the clubhouse is now and where the cart sheds are, where would traffic be diverted?
It would be diverted, back around the backside where that current service road is. But it would, the notes I found, it does provide substantial expansion of the width. That'd be something I'd start with Heath to look at. So we don't inhibit the area, the current landowners there now, or we'd bring that road probably closer to where the cart sheds are. But it would be bypassed around to the rear of the cart sheds. Along to the wastewater, the old wastewater plant there.
Water treatment plant. Yep. All right. Thanks, Terry.
Yep, thank you.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay, I'm gonna actually, it looks like I'm skipping really far ahead, and I am. We're actually gonna go to page 25. and that is the capital improvement sales tax fund. I'm not going to go necessarily in depth into each one of the street kind of categories, but I do want to point out to the council, it's important to see the projected spending for each year is right a little over 3 million just for the street. And then between storm sewer and the industrial park, it's not a lot more. But where this becomes relevant is you've heard me mention plenty of times that we would have to potentially issue debt for some of these bigger projects, the city hall, the streets, all of these, even the golf course potentially. So just what I want the council to be aware of is as we look at that $3 million, anytime we issue debt, that potentially lowers what we can do annually for those street maintenance and new streets and items like that. So it's just kind of more be aware that if we issue too much more debt, those numbers may have to go down. I don't know if there's any questions in regards to that.
Yep, we got some. Councilman Villar?
I'm going to direct this to Heath. Heath, I remember a presentation that you made probably about a year ago, thereabouts, looking at our street maintenance needs. And I remember a figure, I mean, like I thought you said like we could be easily spending $1 million a year more, or we should be spending $1 million a year more than what we currently are. Is this, I guess I'd like your thoughts as far as, is this adequate, or are we still shortchanging ourselves compared to what we should be spending?
Yes, great question, Councilman Vilhauer. I'd love to talk through some thoughts we have in the engineering office in relation to these numbers and how we're sitting on the needs as far as the pavement management program that the city engineering office administers. If you recall, in 2017, we did construct a pavement management analysis of our entire street network, and that we got a very valuable and useful report out of that IMS study. IMS was the consultant that did the work for us. Now, from that study is where we've kind of driven our programmed street maintenance efforts year after year since 2017. And that's where these top few items come directly from. Pavement management program A, B, and C. We've got them broken out into 3 categories just for tracking purposes internally. We're spending about $2 million on those those 3 categories, A, B, and C together, or combined $2 million. The other $500,000 for seal coating and fog sealing, seal coating, crack sealing, fog sealing that we do, surface treatments. That also counts towards what the pavement management program would constitute as pavement rehabilitation and getting some longevity out of our existing streets that are out there. And then the other item that would count towards those efforts would be the $100,000 in large patches. You know, there's some areas where there might be some alligator cracking and the street just needs some large patching efforts for a good stretch of the roadway. So right now, with all those combined, we're spending about $2.6 million a year on pavement management rehabilitation. Now, from the study, and this, to your point, what I presented about a year ago, the study recommended us targeting about 3.6 million. This has increased a little bit the last couple of years. We were targeting about 2.4 million annually. We're up to about 2.6. We would love to see that grow all the more and get closer to being in line with what the pavement management program recommends in order to get ahead of the 8 ball, so to speak, on our pavement needs. And that would be that targeted 3.6 million. So you're exactly right, about another $1 million a year targeted towards pavement management, either rehabilitation or preservation type projects, such as the mill and overlay, the street neighborhood reconstruct projects, and those surface treatment projects that I mentioned. And I do believe that would put us in a lot better place. But of course, the dilemma comes, where do we get that extra $1 million from? And those are some discussions too that I know we've had preliminary discussions on options, on where to find additional revenues, and of course something that we'll continue to look at and help wade through and try to find some solutions.
Councilman Lallam?
Thank you, Mayor. Kristen, I know that the event center is coming off here in the next couple of years. If we were to bond that, that would be, if we were to use as a property tax type of bond versus a sales tax bond, would that help our cause in the overall? Just to try to get some of these, large ticket community projects that really don't have a sales aspect to them or anything along those lines, but they're really more as a benefit for the entire community. Would that help our cause, or would we have enough to do that?
The thing that's, if we go down the general obligation bond, that goes on to the property tax. And what that does is that takes off that burden of our sales tax to facilitate not only our annual improvements, but to also pay the debt. Anytime we issue sales tax revenue bonds, we are held to maintaining a certain amount of debt coverage, so that anytime we issue those sales tax revenue, then yes, our annual amount that we can provide between street, park and rec. Also, you don't see it on here, but some of the things we talk about in park and rec, the industrial park improvements, all of those things go against the sales tax. So yes, the thing when the community considers a general obligation bond is what that does is it puts it on the property tax, but removes that burden from sales tax having to cover the cost of the debt.
You're right, Adam. Some of those broad public benefit projects like the street department building and the fire department building, those are the perfect kind of a project to do with the general obligation bond.
Yep, thank you, appreciate that info.
Yeah. All right, keep going, Kristen.
Okay, I will move on to, actually, we're just gonna go one page to page 26. This is something, I don't know if we need to have too much conversation on it, but I do want to point it out, and it's the phosphorus removal facility. Now, I do know, and Roger or Heath can correct me, but I do think that this is the year, I believe it was 2020, maybe 2021, that we'll actually be doing a study to see the feasibility of that phosphorus removal facility. I don't know if there's any specific questions on this, but this is another piece that if we do go down that route, just because everything's kind of, I don't know if the council's picked up on it, but everything's falling in line between 2022 and 2024. So if we do want to complete all these, definitely the issuance of debt is a very, very honest conversation to have. Does anybody have any questions on the phosphorus or want Heath or Roger to step in?
You are correct, Chris, in that study is currently under contract, and we'll be kicking that off here, I believe, as soon as this week with Clear As, the consultants that were selected for that. I don't know, Roger, if you wanted to touch on that briefly any further.
Basically, the long-term CIP item is contingent upon what we find out in this study. We don't know what the exact cost will be. It's kind of the ballpark. The study is pretty much going to control if it's even possible. So however you want to look at this, I believe it strongly that it should remain on there.
Mm-hmm.
But it all depends on this study. We had hoped to get it done earlier this year, but COVID happened.
All right, thank you. Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, Roger just mentioned it. We all want great water quality in Lake Compesca, but before expending this amount of money, I'm going to want to see the results of that study to see how feasible this is and what we're actually going to be getting for that amount of money. So I believe that it should stay on here, but with the knowledge that we will be voting on this again in the future.
All right, thank you. Okay, Kristen?
Okay, the next page we're going to go to is page 31. I'm not going to touch on this too much, but I do want to point it out. At the landfill, the disposal, we do have cell 7 and cell 8 that are in the long-term plan. These will, I can't speak yet as to what it'll look like. There is the potential that we would seek out either a loan or try to cover these with the revenue made at the landfill. But that'll kind of, as we continue to watch what our cash flow looks like at the landfill, those discussions will come further. The very next one that we are going to look at and this will be the kind of the last one, is the airport fund, page 33. Now, I know what's tough is, as stated earlier, the terminal project kind of bounced forward, and what kind of gets a little tricky at the airport is a lot of times our projects are driven a little bit by the FAA and the grants that we can get. The only thing that I will say that came to our attention here recently is that the snow removal equipment building may have the potential to move forward. But other than that, this breakdown was provided by Helms as kind of the plan for those next 5 years at the airport. If there's any questions, we can, I think between myself and Heath, maybe try to answer them.
Okay, Councilman Billhauer?
Heath or Kristen, if I'm understanding this right, the $2 million that we're looking at for the snow removal equipment building, that's really totally separate from the current airport terminal project that we're gonna soon be undertaking?
Yes and
That's
no.
correct, they're separate, yep.
Yeah, you are correct. It's a separate project. The demolition of the current SRE building is part of the new terminal construction project. And so, once that's demolished, of course, the goal is to bring back a new snow removal equipment storage building. And that's why it was slated out into 2023, waiting for the new terminal to be constructed. To Kristen's point, what Todd's finding is, as our bids have come in decently for the terminal, we're hopeful and suspecting that the site improvement bids next spring will also be favorable, pretty competitive, given the bid climate that most contractors are in right now and that most people are seeing. Now, if that's the case, this is very preliminary, but the FAA has given indications that they would like to see us move up the snow removal equipment building and incorporate it into any other cost savings that we may incur as soon as next year with our site improvement bids. So again, very preliminary information. Now, that's great news to the FAA telling us, hey, we want to give you money sooner, you get stuff done quicker. That's all great news. Of course, the only hiccup is what do we have in our coffers to cover our share of that expense? And that's something that Kristen and I and Todd and the mayor will continue to monitor and keep tabs on.
Councilman Lallam?
Thank you, Mayor. Kristen, on that one there, or maybe Heath, is there any way that we can use the entitlements that we get on that, the $1 million, to help pay for that, or no? Would that be one of those things that we could utilize it for?
Are you referring to more than $1 million when we get our 10,000 employments?
Yeah, employments, yeah.
So my understanding, and that is all a little bit confusing to me, but that is what kind of moves us up in the grant. It's not necessarily that it offsets any of our amount that we have to reimburse. We would still be responsible for our portion, which is now at, I believe it's 6.5% of whatever the project is. And I don't know if Heath can correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
No, Kristen, I think what you're describing is my understanding as well. I don't know if, I'll ask if Todd's online. He could speak in more detail to that if he is available. I don't see him on here.
I've asked that question before, and it's, the grant money that we get includes the entitlement.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have this $15 million worth of grants, plus another million every year of entitlements that's wrapped up with the grants.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Mayor?
Councilman Billhauer?
I guess I want to make sure I understand this. So Heath, you said this might be moved up quicker than 2023. So is that really to our benefit to do that necessarily? Because aren't we going to be taking dollars away from what's already been allocated? Or, I mean, if we stay where it is, I mean, it looked like it'd be 93.5% would be paid for by state and feds. I mean, we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by moving it up earlier, are we?
I think that the greatest benefit would be to the extent of what grant funds are available and what the FAA is steering us in the direction of taking advantage of as far as a bird in the hand, so to speak. That's my understanding of it, is if they were to want or request or recommend that we do this sooner, it's because of taking advantage of the money they have in front of us at that point in time. Now, as to the cost share, those are some details I'd have to iron out with Todd to figure out what kind of difference there would be in the cost share between 21 versus 23.
Sure.
Right, the FAA has apparently brought it up, and they'd like to see it move forward. Another thing to consider is that our terminal construction interrupts our maintenance building function. And so we will be without a maintenance building when we get the new terminal. And so that's happening soon.
Sure.
So do we want to build a temporary building and then build a permanent building? It's cheaper just to build it once and build it when we need it. So, you know, the funding may or may not be 93.5%. It might be 75, it might be 70%. So all those things, we don't have a good answer on yet.
That was my concern, or why I asked the question.
Yeah, yep. Good questions. All right, Kristen?
Okay, so the only thing that kind of covers the long-term capital plan. Now, I didn't state it at the beginning, but I will put it out there. If there is any items that we covered or that the council was able to look at in the plan that they maybe want to make a change to, they want to place it in a different year, change the amount, anything like that, it's a simple motion and second and all that approval to do that. Otherwise, this will be the plan that is in place for this year.
And the
I just I don't know
Public
if there's anything
Works,
the council wants to do.
right, Public Works did request that the street facility be increased to 6 million, right, Heath?
Yes, correct, Mayor.
Which I would support that, changing that number, I think that's appropriate. It's been sitting there a while, and our costs, we've got better cost information to know. We want to be realistic on what it's going to cost. And if we come in lower, that's good, but if we don't want to be short. Councilman Lallam?
I would make that motion to change that amount on the Public Works building to $6 million versus the 4.574.
Second.
Okay,
I'd rather have it as a, more accurate number.
okay. So we have a motion by Lallam and a second by Hoyer. Any discussion on increasing that amount? Councilman Villar?
Just a comment in general, I think, I've gone through this a number of years now, and this is, at this point, still, yes, it's our best guess at this point, but it still only is an estimate at this time. That is subject to change based upon council makeup, other city needs, city manager versus mayor, et cetera, any number of things that could impact this. But it is, our best shot at this point as an estimate of what our needs are for the next 5 years.
Exactly. These aren't obligations, they're estimates. Anyone else? Okay, I'll take a vote on changing that to increase the street to 6 million. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay.
Did I get a second?
Yes, it was Hoyer.
Okay, sorry, couldn't hear it. Okay. Y,
Aye.
Vilhauer,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Albertson,
I,
motion carries.
Okay, were there any other changes that anyone wanted to suggest? Because then we should vote on the entire plan with that increased amount.
Yep.
The recommendation, and then this will be on the consent agenda. No more discussion? Okay, I'll take a vote on that. And you got that, Kristen? I have Albertson and Hoyer.
Yep.
All right, all those in
Okay.
favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote.
Y,
Aye.
Vilhauer,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Albertson.
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you all.
All right, thanks, Kristen. The next item is old business, and it says none. Councilman Hoyer?
I'll just try and keep it quick. Two things. One, I was down in Nelson Park recently. I don't know if we like have people check by parks periodically. I assume we do, but there's just some blatantly broken playground equipment at this point. One of the like bouncy things that you rock forward and back on just snapped in half, so that's just laying there. But it might be something to look at. That park's getting a little rundown at this point. And then the only other thing was, I know we'd kind of briefly talked about it. It's kind of appropriate with the new business that's coming up just because it was part of the discussion and I've heard from a few people on this. But have we started a sidewalk committee or anything, or what's our plan there for discussing policy on our sidewalk ordinance?
In what part of the ordinance?
Enforcement of it, or what we want to do with it. It's something that it gets talked about all the time, but it's been on the books for so long now that we're supposed to have them, and either we enforce it or set a get well date, or else we start really talking about what is our overall plan.
Right, so we do have an overall plan, and if you want to change it at any time, you can, and here's what it is. But we have an obligation to bring our existing sidewalks up to ADA compliance, and it's something we spend money on every year. We have a sidewalk accessibility improvement project. And other than that, if we have someone that requests a route, a sidewalk route, where none exists, we can, as a community, the council can order sidewalks in so that there is a complete route from point A to point B. And that's how we've been operating for many years. We have had numerous sidewalks ordered in that way. And, you know, when it comes to our attention is when it happens. If the council would want to take a harder line on that and actually go out and look for gaps and not wait for people to request accessible routes, we could certainly do that. And that's up to you as a body, but that isn't what we've done in the past. So it isn't like we're not paying attention. When we get a complaint about a problem, the engineering department goes out and assesses it. And if we find that it doesn't meet the ADA requirements, the sidewalk repairs get ordered in. It's the responsibility of the property owner to make those. But that's also why we have the bucket of money available to assist people. So we do reimburse when the sidewalk is in disrepair, or old neighborhoods where someone's putting fill-in sidewalk, we have money available, and we just increased that at the last council meeting, the cost share that the city provides. Otherwise, anybody in a newer neighborhood where sidewalks were a requirement passed on to the property owners, those are the complete 100% responsibility of the property owner. And usually the council will hear pretty loudly from the property owners if they're ordered to put it in without someone saying, hey, I walk here, I would like a sidewalk. So that's why it hasn't been done unless there's actually someone requesting that sidewalk. But if you think that we should step it up, the staff could certainly step it up. That's the council's prerogative. Yeah.
I think for me, it's more so just taking a hard look at it, because I know that the folks that are on 14th, some of them feel a little, and we heard it a little bit in the discussion about it, like, does it take a project happening to force me to do this? And why does it have to be me that gets this now, but nobody else has to do it?
Oh, you mean
Which isn't
10th.
really what it is. Yeah, 10th, excuse me. I just said 14th because I looked at street there. But I don't know. It's just, it's something that's been a long conversation in the community, and we talk about it, and then it's there, but it's not. And then it always seems like we're complaint-based with some of our stuff. So
We are, true.
I don't know. It's just, if it's an ordinance, either we do it or we don't. Or if we're gonna find where those exemptions are, I mean, by now I would think we'd have a study that talked about walkability in the community and where maybe it's not necessary and maybe where it is. I know that down in, like my ward, for instance, or just being in one of the older wards in town, that you'll find some really strange design decisions. And I've walked quite a bit even in other areas. But I mean, it's looking at the sidewalk issue. It's looking at, we have streets in town and I know this is gravel roads committee, but we have that, but there's no curb and gutter in neighborhoods over by the high school. So it's just, I don't know. It seems like there's some things that we might want to take a hard look at, and maybe we do that in a more organized fashion, especially when it comes to sidewalks, just because, I don't know, it's the idea that we have some near schools that it's still kids walking in the street when it's winter. Because there isn't a sidewalk in their neighborhood, and they're just going to choose to do that because no one's policing them to keep them up out of the street. But I don't know, just something maybe to consider coming up here as we go into winter.
Yes, thank you, I appreciate that. It's been controversial throughout our history.
Always.
Any other old business? Okay, new business. We do have an item on the agenda, 14th Street Southeast right-of-way vacate discussion for the South Dakota Department of Transportation Highway 212 Phase 2 Reconstruction Project. And I'll ask Heath to talk about this. You don't need action, do you? Or are you looking for action?
I'm looking for, yeah, you could consider it action, looking for council approval to give DOT direction to
Okay.
move forward
To
in
move
this.
forward with the
yeah.
vacation process. Can
Precisely.
I get a motion on that? Motion by Helene, second by Vilhauer. Okay, go ahead, Heath.
Thank you, Mayor. Brief synopsis of this is that the DOT is still continually working on Phase 2 of the Highway 212 reconstruction project. One of the components that we're talking about tonight is the intersection of Highway 212 with our city street, 14th Street. And in the project, here's a configuration of that intersection as is newly proposed through the DOT's design. To the right here is north on this diagram, and that's 14th Street. To the left here, of course, is south that leads down to Hy-Vee, and Highway 212 is running east and west up and down the page here. So the current tie-in of the north leg of this intersection is offset from the south leg of the intersection. And what we're wanting to do, and the DOT is agreeable with, is realigning 14th. You can see the red line work here where the new curb and gutter will tie in and match up more appropriately across the intersection of the existing south leg of the intersection. What happens when we realign this leg of 14th further to the east is we end up with a large area of right-of-way that really doesn't serve any significant purpose or need for the city. There are some utilities in there that we would want to retain a utility easement for if they're not otherwise relocated out into the right-of-way. But what the DOT is just wanting is a checkoff from the city that they can move forward and plan on a right-of-way vacate, which they've already prepared an exhibit for this portion of right-of-way that would no longer be needed. And it's this kind of purple hatched, pink hatched area here that would no longer be needed, and we would vacate formally months down the road once construction's complete, and we're looking at having the ability to vacate it at that point in time. So this is a preliminary head nod, check off that yes, the city would be agreeable to do that. The formal action wouldn't come for some time. Also to note, the DOT is already procuring the additional right-of-way on our behalf in relation to this area of 14th for the new alignment to be met. So I told them we would run this past the council and get some level of response from the council and get back to DOT accordingly.
All right, thank you. And this is a good change. The 212 is a section line. It's a correction line where the streets don't intersect. And it's an unfortunate place to have a state highway on a correction line because the south and the north don't meet. And so then we have to make these changes to the alignment, and that costs money. So any questions or comments about that? Councilman Y?
Thanks, Mayor. Question for Heath. Is the state looking at possibly putting stoplights there, or are we having that discussion?
Yes, this would be the location that the lights would be relocated from 13th Street over to this intersection at 14th Street.
Councilman Lallam?
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, can you kind of, just for the people that are watching this, Just kind of say the businesses that are around it to let them know approximately where that is. I mean, they say 14th Street Southeast, but where the surrounding businesses are.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a CAM development property, but I believe the Hy-Vee Liquor Store leases this. I don't believe they're owners of it, but Hy-Vee Liquor Store is right here at this corner of the intersection. As I mentioned, over off the map here is the Hy-Vee store itself. And I forget who was located.
That's the
J.H. Larson.
J.H. Larson building that the road is coming close to.
So on this particular
Yeah, right there.
photo, essentially the highway is running up and down versus east-west.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. The orientation is off here. North
Yeah.
to the right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please.
Why?
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Albertson.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, is there any other new business?
Mayor,
Yes. Go ahead,
I
Matt.
just want to state something for the record there on that, the action that was just taken. Just as a kind of reminder that formal action will still be forthcoming and that nothing that the council just did binds the city in any way. That'll be a separate vote that'll have to be taken at some point. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Right, thank you. There's a very explicit process for vacating right-of-way. We didn't do it just now. That'll be coming in the future. Is there any other new business? Not seeing any. Since we're running short on time, we will not go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2. And instead, there's no further business. We will adjourn and be back for the council meeting in about 5 minutes. So we'll take a quick break. Thank you.